Hello everyone and welcome to the stream. I am Razim and we are here once again for another wonderful lore dump from Kerr himself. We will turn it over now to Kerr for Kerr Tales.
Alright. Hey there everyone, how's everyone doing today? Hope everyone's doing good so far. Just getting a little bit of something from my background as well.
You're doing what?
I was getting a little bit of music playing in my background too, just so I have something to listen to while talking.
Oh, is it not coming through Discord?
No, your music is, but I was setting up a little bit of music for me too.
Oh.
Just music I enjoy.
Oh, you don't like my music.
I like usually words being in mine. That's just me.
Oh, well, if you want
Anyway.
words, I mean, I've got... let's see here.
It's fine. Let's get started.
Here.
So, how's everyone doing? I hope everyone's okay. For those who weren't here last time, we talked about the World of Darkness. A world very much like our own, where supernatural creatures exist, though. And today we are going to be continuing into that. And today we are going to be focusing on the vampire. If I ever do that again, shoot me. So,
No,
the
you're
vampire.
too cute for that.
The vampires. They're one of the big three, so to speak, of the World of Darkness. They are the one that started it all, so to speak. Vampires were the first race who got a book. They're the ones who started the World of Darkness. And they have a lot of lore to them. They are referred to as the Kindred, or as Cainites, depending on which faction you're talking about. Most often you're going to hear the word kindred being thrown about. The only time you might call each other vampires is like when they're dealing with someone who doesn't know their lore and information and such. A normal person would call them vampires. They would not usually use that term, though. They are each and every one of them descendants of Cain. Yes, that Cain, the biblical Cain, and the one who killed Abel. He is the original vampire. He is the first vampire. He is the most powerful vampire. If you fight Cain, you lose. Hard lose to him. You can think of the vampires here very much like you could think of pretty much any sort of pop culture vampire. They have a lot of the same weaknesses and strengths. Weaknesses being predominantly fire and sunlight is extremely deadly to them. They do not like fire at all. They will flee from it usually. And sunlight will do horrific burns to them. It can usually, depending on how strong the vampire in question is, kill them in seconds, while some vampires can actually survive being in sunlight for a couple of minutes. There is a story in lore of one of the clans, one of the groups of vampires known as the Gangrel. One of their leaders was being chased by some assassins, and he fled to the rooftops in noonday sun. And he ran the length of about 2 football fields to get away from the assassins. And he did not die, despite running in sunlight. That's due to some of his abilities that he had that made him able to resist the sunlight's horrific damage that it can do to vampires. Which we'll get into that, though, a little bit later. But yeah. Wood, specifically like a wooden stake, does not kill a vampire, even if you stake him in the heart. It will put them into torpor, though. That means that if you stake a vampire in the heart, they basically get thrown to sleep until the stake is pulled out of them. So a good way to kill them is stake them and then leave them out for the sun to find. Otherwise, each vampire clan has their own special weakness, which we'll get into when we actually get into the clans. Vampires, as descendants of Cain, have what are called generation. This basically means this is how old a vampire is in relation to Cain. In order to go up generation, you have to eat another vampire who is older than you. That is the only way to do it, and it marks you. And pretty much among vampires, if you are found out for eating another vampire, what is called diablerizing them, you are basically killed on sight. This is no holds bar. They die if anyone finds out that you are one of them. Most vampires nowadays are between 9th and 13th generation. That means there have been 13 generations of vampires from Cain. Every time you make a new vampire, that vampire is one generation lower than you are, if that makes sense.
That
Also,
makes
I'm
sense.
using...
Your what?
I was using you as a way to make sure it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you can't follow, that means I have to explain it more. Most generations nowadays in modern knights are between 9th and 13th generation. There are older generations, they're just not as active anymore. They spend most of their time asleep. The oldest generation are the antediluvians. Those are the 3rd generation vampires. Those are the oldest vampires currently alive. And they are basically considered to be myths for the most part. Until one woke up and caused the Week of Nightmares, which we talked about in the last episode. If an antediluvian woke up and decided to start doing things, really, really bad things happen. They are the progenitor of all 13 of the clans. They're the ones who started them. Older generations basically still run things like 4th, 5th generations. They're around, but they pretty much don't do much. 6th and 7th generations are kind of the oldest ones who still function in vampire society, and then you start getting the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th ones. Those are pretty much the most common ones you're going to see. There are technically 14th, 15th, and 16th generation vampires, but these are considered to be so weak and diluted that a lot of vampires won't even consider them to be true vampires, technically, because they are so weak. Now,
Do they actually have... So their power actually does wane the further they are
Yes.
from Cain?
correct. The further you are from Cain, the weaker you are.
Okay.
And keep in mind though, a 13th generation vampire can pretty much kill any normal mortal literally with like 3 seconds of effort. It's not a big deal for them. A 3rd generation vampire can drive literally every single member of their clan insane across the entire planet. Despite being the weakest of the vampires, a 13th through 16th generation vampire is still extremely deadly to anyone who is normal. They're still vampires. The key difference in them is they do not have a lot of time to practice their abilities. They're usually fairly young compared to other vampires, and they just cannot use as much blood in their abilities because in order for a vampire to use one of their abilities, they have to spend blood points, which they get by feeding. Older vampires can spend more blood points to fuel their powers more, or to use more than one ability at once. Younger vampires cannot do that. They have a hard cap for how much blood they can use. Does that make sense?
Okay, repeat that again.
The big difference between younger and older vampires, other than the sheer ability of like time to practice and train and get experience, is the amount of blood points that they can spend.
So how much power
blood...
they can store.
Correct.
Okay.
A young vampire can only spend 1 blood point per turn. An older vampire can spend like 2 or 3 points, so they can activate multiple abilities at once.
Okay.
They also have stronger abilities. Their arts can just get stronger. They can break the caps and go into abilities that other vampires cannot use.
Okay.
So
yeah,
talking about all this, I suppose we should ask, what makes a vampire? How are vampires made nowadays? The way this happens is known as the embrace. When the embrace happens, a vampire has to have permission from the local prince. Basically, the vampire who's in charge of a city or a town, the top dog, they have to have permission to embrace somebody. If you don't have permission and you just decide, hey, I want to make this person into a vampire, you and the kid are going to fucking die. Because that is considered a very big insult to the prince to do that. So usually they will find out about it and then they're going to kill both of you. Unless you have permission from them to do this. What the embrace actually is the vampire in question has to drain the person that they want to turn into a vampire of every drop of their blood, and then give them a single drop of their own blood in order to turn them. This will usually happen instantly. The vampire who is the one who does the embrace is known as the sire. The new vampire who is just born is called the child. Childe. Childe. Actually, hang on. I want to try to see. Yeah, it doesn't actually have a way to use that. I've always heard it pronounced child. Or Childer is the plural version of it. When a person goes through the embrace, it's nasty for them. All of their internal organs wither away, all of their bodily fluids are replaced by blood, and basically they are nothing but blood inside of them. They can use their blood to enhance their physical attributes, or use supernatural abilities to embrace other people, or to make humans into what are called ghouls, which are, they're human, but they're basically enhanced by vampire blood.
Old Pal is talking about half-blooded vampires?
It is not possible to have a half-blood vampire in this. Vampires are sterile. It is impossible for them to have children. And it is also pretty much impossible for a vampire to turn any other creature, usually. If they try to change a changeling, it doesn't usually work. The changeling will usually die or just become a normal vampire. If they try to turn a werewolf, the werewolf will 99% of the time die, because Gaia will not let her children become vampires. If if it's like one of the rare 1% where a vampire embraces a werewolf and the werewolf does not die, they will become what is known as an abomination, which is a combination of a werewolf and a vampire. These things are terrifying. Like, I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. They are horrifically terrifying. They are extremely powerful, also very insane and crazy. They can shapeshift between their forms. They cannot regenerate anymore, but they can still heal like other vampires can by spending blood points. They know all of the gifts they knew as werewolves, and they can still learn new gifts as well. And they can also use disciplines like vampires. So they get all the abilities of werewolves and vampires.
So, really scary things.
Really scary things. They tend to be killed on sight. They are usually killed on sight by both werewolves and vampires due to the fact of they are very dangerous to keep around, and they don't usually give a shit about the masquerade. So most vampires will not do this usually. Let's see what else. We got it's a mage who gets turned into a vampire just becomes a normal vampire. They lose all their magical abilities. Though it's easier for them to learn vampire magic than it would normally be. Going through my notes I had written out. Blood is key for a vampire. Blood is literally everything to them. They always usually are trying to feed. Because in order to wake up at night after they have slept, they need to spend at least 1 point of blood. If they don't have it, they cannot wake up, and they will usually go crazy trying to eat. They do not like the taste of animal blood. Animal blood tastes disgusting to them. Only human blood is really, like, delicious to them. And it's not that difficult for them to feed. When they feed on someone, they just bite them, and the process is extremely pleasurable for both the victims and for the vampires itself. Arguably, it is basically the only pleasure that the vampire actually has is feeding. And it is very possible for people who have been fed on multiple times to become addicted to it. Vampires themselves do not technically have any emotions anymore. They do, like, a vampire can still react with anger, they can still know joy and happiness and all of that, but that is more of an echo of what they used to feel when they were alive. It's not actual, like, an emotion you or I would feel anymore. They don't really realize that necessarily, but yeah, it's nothing really gets the same reaction to them anymore. The only thing they really feel anymore after they become embraced is the urge to feed. That's it. anything else. They don't need anything else. Vampires do not heal. Other than wounds that they spend blood points to heal, a vampire will not normally heal unless they are asleep. When they do, when they rise at the beginning of the night, their body automatically heals up to whatever state they were in when they were first embraced. This also happens to their minds, though. Very old vampires find it almost impossible to learn new things. Their brains are just set in a certain way. They only think one way. That's just the way they are. But as they age and become stronger, they get extremely durable, extremely difficult to kill. Like, bullets to a vampire are nothing to them. They don't care. Shooting them only deals bashing damage, which is the damage that is most easy to soak, most easy to take, and the most easy damage to just kind of write off. It's like, to us, it's like getting like punched in the shoulder gently, or like getting kicked by someone. Yeah, it hurts a little bit, but you aren't really going to care that much. It's the same thing with the vampire and getting shot. They can heal those wounds, no problem. What you need against them is fire and like slashing weapons. Those are dangerous to them. That's why most vampire hunters don't carry guns. They carry flamethrowers, incendiary grenades, and like swords, because those can actually do damage to a vampire.
Does holy water do damage to them?
If it is actual true holy water, it can. But it has to be made by someone who has true faith.
Okay.
True faith is something I haven't really gone into. It is an ability mortals can have, and some supernatural creatures can also have it. True faith is basically true belief in a higher power that can protect you. And this isn't like, oh, you go to church every week. This is literal, like, you truly, truly down to your bones believe in it. And to a vampire, that can hurt them. The stronger the faith is, the more dangerous it is to them. Like, if you hold up a cross with true faith, it will drive them back, or it can burn them. You touching them can hurt them. For you, I can tell you this: Michael has true faith. Dresden has true faith. It's the Red Court's weakness to like what happened with like when Michael touched them, or Harry using his pentacle.
Oh, you're talking. I thought you were talking about Werewolf Michael, my character.
No.
I was like, he does?
I'm talking about Dresden Files. Dresden Files. I'm talking about Dresden Files.
Speaking of, recommended reading for everybody to go along with this series is the Dresden Files. Fantastic book series.
Very good book series for World of Darkness. Very good book series for World of Darkness.
I mean, it's just a good book series in general. But yes, it is very accurate for World of Darkness.
Like, not everything technically fits, but a lot of the stuff fits. Vampires themselves don't really see this very often, especially nowadays. It used to be a lot more common. Like, the time of the Inquisition, yeah, it was common for people to have true faith back then. Nowadays, it's terribly rare. Many vampires will go their entire unlives without ever seeing anyone who has it. However, vampires have what is called the Masquerade. These are rules and laws that dictate what a vampire can and cannot do. Basically, Cliff Notes version for it, you don't fucking reveal yourself to people. you don't let them reveal that vampires are real. Because that's when the people start getting the torches and the pitchforks, and they don't want to deal with that again. They did it once before. They got the Inquisition, and it was one of the darkest times for vampires and the supernatural in general. And they've decided they ain't gonna kick the beehive again. So, basically what it comes down to is the prince is in charge of a city. You listen to the prince. His word is law. And don't fuck with them. And do not, under any circumstances, allow humans to find out about vampires. Not unless they're like under your full control. Like if you have them under your full domination, well, it's not that big of a deal then because they can't do anything anyway. But better safe than sorry. Vampires have a lot of money, and they basically sort of like run everything. They are very, very good in controlling things from behind the scenes. Now let's see. Going through the thingy things. The vampires are divided into different clans. Basically, think of this like a family that you are embraced into. You become a member of that clan when you are turned into a vampire. You are able to gain special abilities from that. You're able to learn special abilities that only that bloodline knows. And each clan has a weakness. Every clan has a weakness to them that makes it so, well, each one. I'm trying to think of the way I want to put it here. Basically, think of it this way. All the sort of stories you've heard about vampires, their weaknesses and such, things that they do or don't do, a lot of that falls under their weakness of that particular clan. And who are the clans? Let me get that. I'll start with the normal clans that most players would know. Clan Ventrue. Clan Ventrue, these are the normal vampires that you're going to think of. Like, Dracula was a Ventrue, I believe, if I remember correctly. The Ventrue believe themselves to be basically... They are the nobility of the vampires. They are the ones who run everything. They are the ones who ensure that all of the politics are taken care of, that everyone works hard for honor and leadership. And it is their belief that they know what is best for everybody, and that it is up to them to ensure that everything is taken care of for them. A long time ago, the only people who would make it into the clan were people of nobility and prestige and privilege. Kings, merchant princes, people like that. And nowadays, it's more like CEO and politicians usually end up as vampires in their group. Their weakness that they have is what is called rarefied taste. What that means is every Ventrue has to choose a certain type of person to feed on. They can only get sustenance and feed on people of that type. Some Ventrues can only feed on girls. Some Ventrue can only feed on people they consider to be beautiful. I know there's a couple of really twisted Ventrue who can only feed on children. Blood of the innocent and all that in their twisted minds. But each Ventrue has to choose some blood type like that, and that's the only thing that they can eat. Anything else, and it's going to be utterly disgusting to them, and they cannot eat it. Also, they're kind of assholes, and pretty much every other vampire group kind of hates them, low-key. Like, really, really hates them a lot.
Is it a kill on sight kind of hatred, or a they're not invited to the family reunion kind of hate?
Actually, the Ventrue are usually the ones who are going to be princes of any city or town. They're the most likely ones to actually be the one in charge. Everyone else kind of hates them, though, because they're so fucking pissy about it and so full of themselves, but they have the political power to back it up, so they can't actually do anything about it most of the time. But most vampires do not like the Ventrue because,
Okay.
well, the Ventrue is well full of themselves.
Pete, that last bit, you kind of broke out a bit.
Yeah, everyone pretty much has to follow the Ventrue's lead because the Ventrues like rule like 80% of the cities, but no one really likes them. No one really wants to do what they say, but they don't have a lot of choice. The Ventrue are just really good at their job, and despite what people will say, even their rivals have to admit they are usually pretty good at their job. The next clan we're going to talk about are the Tremere. The Tremere are one of the most recent clans. And they are also actually low-key, like, the other clans really don't like them. They nearly wiped them out before. Because the Tremere are not technically an original vampire clan descended from Cain. They are a group of mages who became vampires.
Why did they decide to do that?
Because they wanted the immortality and power of a vampire for themselves. So in the Middle Ages, a mage known as Tremere, him and his followers hunted down one of the antediluvians, and they ate him using a magic ritual that turned Tremere into a 4th generation vampire. And then he made all of his servants and followers into vampires as well. They ended up losing their magic, but they learned how to use blood magic instead, which is the type of magic vampires use. And that's their curse, though. They cannot learn normal vampire disciplines, normal vampire special abilities like super strength, super speed. Those types of abilities are very difficult for them to learn. But magic is very easy for them to learn. Way easier than anyone else. That's pretty much how they kind of survived back when they first formed, is they used politicking to keep their enemies away from them. And basically use their magic to get a foothold and basically go, hey, we're better at this than all of you guys are. We're willing to help you out, though, if you don't wipe us out. The other clans made a pact with them to work with them, but the pact is starting to run out. And they kind of still remember what they did. And, well, Tremere is worried that they might try to wipe them out. But that kind of fighting would be devastating to whatever like town or city it was in. It would be really bad, really bad if open warfare started between the clans, which is one of the reasons why they haven't done it. One of their big things, though, is perfectionism as well. They have to be perfect. They have to have everything be just the way they want it to be. If it's not, it can drive them fucking nuts. Where the Ventrue are arrogant to a degree of truly breathtaking stupidity sometimes, these guys are like that, except they are stuck with perfectionism. They have to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect. And if it isn't, then usually they kill something. Next, we have the Toreador. This is one of my personal favorite groups. The Toreador are vampires who love and are obsessed with beauty. They are utterly obsessed with getting artists, with getting music, things that they view as beautiful, cultural, and art and such. That is what is most important to them. With them, though, their desire is also their greatest weakness. They have an issue where if they see something that they find to be beautiful, they can literally just freeze up and not move. And they will just stand there helpless for minutes or even hours and just literally marvel at whatever they find to be beautiful. They will just get fixated with it, and they also are extremely obsessive over something. Once they find something, they can't take their attention off of it, and they will be focused on that until they either find something else to obsess over, or until they get bored of it, basically, until it becomes so banal that they just don't get any pleasure out of it anymore. For use him, these guys are like the White Court vampires from Dresden Files.
Yeah, I kind of figured that.
This is especially how they like to act. These are the nice vampires. They aren't,
Relatively.
but they like to pretend they are. They very much like hiding behind the veneer of civilization and such. Next there's Clan Rapnos. This is the antediluvian who woke up. He's the one who woke up during the Week of Nightmares and drove them all crazy with his ability. The Rapnos are basically, for them, they are people who were wandering tricksters, mystics, and vagabonds for the most part. They like to travel. They like to live life dangerously. They were daredevils. They loved to just basically try to do whatever they wanted, whatever excited them, without regards to the consequences. They also are really good at fucking with people's heads, making them see things that aren't real, and manipulating their senses and their minds. That was one of their abilities that only they could use, was illusions and such. They could teach it to other people, but For them specifically, they had that as their personal gift. For their weaknesses, every single Rapnos clan member has a compulsion that they have to do. It can be something good, like defending an innocent person or having to compulsorily donate to the poor, or it could be something really bad, like they have to plagiarize someone, or they have to murder like 10 people. They can't help it.
That is quite the that's
Difference?
quite the gap there, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Um, the big issue that they have now is what's called doomed. They cannot sleep in a place that they have slept in within the they can only sleep in a place for 7 nights. If they do not move on after that, they start to burn to death. So what they do to get around that is they will use like a big like mover's truck or a big think like a 18 wheeler, and they'll constantly be on the move because as long as they do not sleep within a mile of their last location, they're okay. But they
Toshime
have to keep
says
moving.
7 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They have to keep moving. They can't stop, really. Otherwise, it gets too dangerous to them. Their other thing, though, too, is they are compulsed. They have a compulsion. They can't help it. They have to. They are driven to tempt fate. These are the people who will always say, what is the worst that could happen? They will always do the most flashy and over-the-top thing, even if something subtle would work instead. Yeah, they are pretty much almost extinct nowadays, though. Since the Week of Nightmares, very, very, very few of them are actually left now. Most of them went crazy and started trying to kill each other, and there's very few of them actually left anymore. The basically the Ravnos who are left, there's about 100 of them in all the world, and none of them are like high generation, or sorry, low generation. They are all pretty new vampires. And they basically can't actually stop to make routes and try to figure out what to do because they always have to keep moving, always have to keep traveling. Let's see, who else do we have? Ooh, ooh, ooh. I know. These guys. Probably the considered to be the most terrifying, the most dangerous, the most disgusting, and pretty much the worst of the worst. The Samices. The Samisi vampires. These guys, nobody likes. Nobody likes the Samisi. I'm trying to think of like the best way to describe them. They are terrible.
Toshimi says asks the flesh makers.
The flesh. Yep, that's the Samisi. The Samisi are vampires who they have a very, very special ability that only their clan can use, called vivisectitude. What that allows them to do is shape flesh into whatever they want. They can manipulate their own flesh, and they can manipulate another person's flesh. There's a case back in the Dark Ages where someone pissed off a Samisi vampire, and the Samisi ended up turning them into a church of flesh. Because they wanted to. The Samisi do not try to be human. They see that as a failed cause. They aren't human anymore. So they believe in basically pushing the boundaries of flesh and doing whatever the fuck they want. And they are extremely dangerous. They are one of the most powerful vampires. Their clan is not messed with because their abilities work very well on vampires, just like it works on anyone else. And if you piss off a Samisi, they won't kill you, but you might spend the rest of eternity as a chair. Because, yeah, they can do that.
They're the source of SCP-002?
Yeah, they could do that.
For those that don't know, that's the living room.
Yeah, they could do that. You know the flesh that hates?
Yes, that one as well.
That's them. They can do that very easily. Samisi vampires are basically either avoid or kill on sight if you can. Usually, most people will try to avoid them. Because if you have to actually deal with one, you better hope you don't piss them off. However, the Samisi do have weaknesses just like everybody else. One of which is their code of hospitality. They are required to do a few things. If someone comes to them asking to be a guest, and offers gift or service, they are required to accept them as a guest, to give them shelter and nourishment for 3 days and 3 nights, not counting the night of arrival. They must give protection against any third-party aggressors. All inter-family grievances or issues are put on hold, and they are given the best quarters of the host's home, up to and including the host's own chambers. But in exchange, they cannot stay any longer than the 3 days or 3 nights unless invited to. They cannot anger the host or his family needlessly, and they must respect the host's boundaries and property as well. The Samisi are very, very serious about these rules. They will not break them, and anyone who does, the Samisi will hunt them down and obliterate them. A very minor breach, like an accident or something, that can be okay so long as the trespasser is apologetic and it was basically an accident. But major breaches, basically, the only time that can be fixed is killing the Samisi, basically. Who did that? What they are weak to, though, is every Samisi must sleep surrounded by soil of their land that they were from. If they do not, they suffer pretty bad damage and can die. So anytime you hear the stories of the vampires who have to sleep in like certain types of dirt, like within their coffins and such, that's a Samisi vampire. They are also very, very obsessive and covetous. They have to own things that they are interested in. They become obsessive over it until either they own it or the object that they desire becomes unattainable. So this isn't just objects or items though, too. They get obsessed over people, and then they won't stop until they own those people and have them for themselves. But to them, they themselves, they consider themselves to be artists. And they consider themselves to be basically their abilities make them artists. If that makes sense. Let's see, who else do we got? I'm also kind of cutting out a little bit of information here, mostly because I only have a half hour and there's still a lot to go over. Who else? Ooh.
I mean, we can split this into 2 parts.
This is true.
Zerda, to answer your question, this is where Kerr lore dumps all over all of you. This is a segment we call Kerr Tales, where Kerr comes on to explain various lore from different different series. Right, we've started off with World of Darkness. Yes, Kerr, my BF.
Hi.
He's super adorable.
Yes.
And Jaffer is the first one to try out the Pokeball. Unfortunately, you did not manage to catch me, Jaffer. Kerr, really?
Yes.
I just added a couple of new redeems while we were doing this. Now they can throw dice and Pokeballs at me. And if the next bits goal gets completed... Thanks. If the next bits goal gets completed, I've got even more to add.
Joke.
But anyways, back to the lore.
The Nosferatu. The Nosferatu are, if you've ever heard, probably one of the most famous vampire movies in all of existence. Nosferatu. Nosferatu is a Nosferatu. Nosferatu are extremely ugly. They are terrifying. And they are extremely horribly deformed and inhuman. Their symbol appearance is a breach of the masquerade. Because they are obviously not human, they are obviously not normal, and they can be absolutely terrifying to look at. However, vampire society accepts them because Nosferatu are really fucking good spies. Their compulsion, what they kind of have to do, is they don't stop until they know everything. They are obsessed with secrets, almost as much as they are obsessed with that with blood. And they won't stop until they basically learn everything they possibly can. They are very good at traveling underground through sewer systems and subway systems. And that's usually how they used to get around. They will not usually show up where they cannot show their face to normal humans though. That's their thing. Anything if they did, it would be an instant breach of the masquerade and they could get in trouble for that. Unless they're feeding. If they're feeding, that's okay. Because then they don't really have a choice to do it. Their things are usually what they will do is they really love embracing either those who are homeless, people who basically are at the very bottom of the totem pole who don't feel any connection or kinship with anyone. These people, they believe the embrace is a blessing and giving them basically a family who cares about. However, a Nosferatu's embrace is extremely painful because their bodies literally warp and change as they become one, and it can kill them or it can basically turn them into near mindless brutes because of mental brain damage. The other type of people they really like to feed on are people who are born into privilege and people who are absolutely beautiful and like to use that beauty against other people. They really enjoy doing that. Um, yeah, those Nosferatu who are embraced that way are known as Cleopatras. They like doing it. They really, really like fucking with their appearance. But yeah, Clan Nosferatu, they are scary. They are the spy masters. Nothing usually goes by without them finding out about it. Some way, shape, or form, of course. And moving on from them are the Malkavians. The Malkavians
Toshime's got a
are...
comment.
Oh, yes?
Or they embrace someone to make them look how ugly the personality.
Yeah, that's usually the second form. That's usually a Cleopatra.
Okay. Zerda, they don't get the right to determine that beauty is wrong, they just take that right.
Yeah, they're vampires. They don't care what normal people say.
Yeah.
To them, normal people are food. They eat people. To them, it's not a big deal. Um, the Malkavians are kind of similar to the Nosferatu. They have probably one of the biggest known weaknesses and probably the worst weakness out of all of them. They are utterly and irredeemably insane and crazy. Their mind shatters when they go through the embrace. And every single Malkavian suffers at least one derangement. And they always feel that madness pushing in on them. They have delusions, visions. It's nasty. They pretty much are all crazy, and they are also somewhat psychic. They can view things. They can sometimes see visions of the future. They can sometimes see other things. It's not always. Depends on the vampire in question. But it's something they're very good at, and they do get their own special discipline known as dementation, which basically lets them inflict their madness onto other people. So they can start driving people crazy, and at their full form, they can send someone into absolute madness. They're scary. They're dangerous. One of their abilities, I'm trying to figure out which one where it is. Because it's pretty a fun one. Where are you? Oh, yeah. One of the ones that elders can learn is called Child Mind, and you basically give someone a psychic lobotomy, and you can reduce their mental attributes by up to 7 points. Hey, Zim, I have a question for you.
I might have an answer.
What would happen to your mage character if we took away 7 of his mental points from his intelligence, perception, and his wit score?
Horrible, horrible things?
Yeah, they can do that. Like I said, psychic lobotomy.
He might not be dead, but he definitely would not be doing very well.
Yeah, they like they like screwing with people's heads. It's fun for them. Next one, Clan Gangrel. Clan Gangrel, I feel like is the one Zim would freaking love. At least a little bit. Clan Gangrel are the ones most in tune with animals and beasts. They tend to travel place to place. They prefer the wild places to places of the cities. They are very, very strong, very tough. The vampire who ran across the rooftops in sunlight was a gangrel. Their curse and bane is anytime they frenzy, which means they lose control of themselves and have to feed, they gain animal traits. Animal traits or features or appearance of animals is what they get. It could be tufted ears, a pelt, a tail, cat-like eyes, a snarling voice, tusks, scales, or feathers.
I'm interested. Not so sure how I feel about them having to eat to gain these, but...
No, it's control.
Oh, when they lose oh, okay.
Yeah, they have to lose control to the beast inside of them and go into frenzy. Basically, you're so hungry you go crazy and you won't stop until you eat. Yeah, they gain animal traits, and if it's a particularly bad frenzy, it can be permanently. And their other one that they have is feral impulses. They start acting more like animals. Rather than speaking, they will basically go to try to fight. They can only speak in like one-word sentences, is it?
Octo says Clan Tremere is really cool, but I've heard they are real jerks in lore.
Yes, we've talked about Clan Tremere before. They are the mages. They used to be a clan of mages before they became vampires. And they ate one of the vampire antediluvians, which is one of the oldest vampires that was alive at the time, in order to become a clan of vampires. They are kind of dicks, but that's because every other vampire group kind of hates them because they don't see them as real vampires because they're not descended from Cain. They are a group of hopped up mages who decide, hey, we're going to become vampires because we want to be vampires. So a lot of the mages or the vampires really don't like them. And they're kind of dicks too, though. They really are. They're from the Order of Hermes originally. And the Order of Hermes is probably the biggest group of mages who have sticks up their asses. Also, I have a kitty, and she is demanding pets, and she is being adorable. I just thought everyone should know this. Let's see, who else? There is Clan Lasombra. Clan Lasombra is a... I'm trying to think of how to put them. They are... Let me double check something real quick because I want to make sure I don't get them mixed up. Because they're very similar to another one. I want to make sure I don't get them mixed up. Yes, okay. Clan Lasombra are all about basically being... They're all about the shadows. They exist for themselves and only themselves. They are very much a group who basically views themselves to be above everyone. They're sort of similar to the Ventrue in that way. Their curse, though, that they have is they do not have reflections. They will not show up on recordings. They will not show up in mirrors. Microphones cannot usually pick up their voices. They can't use touch technology. Pretty much anything that relies on electronics or mirrors won't work on a Lasombra. So many of the Lasombra have to have servants who can do that stuff for them. Also, their curse also makes it very easy for them to break the masquerade because they don't usually have reflections. So that's kind of a big deal if a person sees them. Also, they are ruthless. They are utterly and completely ruthless. They will not stop until they get what they want. And they will keep trying until they get what they want. Their big thing, though, their big gift that they have, that only they have, is the manipulation and control of shadows. At some of their strongest abilities that most vampires can use is they can literally turn into a living shadow. And that shadow can only be hurt by fire, sunlight, or magic. When you get into stuff like their elders can do, that's when you can start getting into like making a copy of yourself from your own shadow, or draw your shadow into yourself to become stronger, or summon shadows to fight for you. One of their greatest abilities, though, and one of the most difficult for them to learn, is they can temporarily blot out the sun in the area they're in. They're all about darkness and shadows. The other group who kind of somewhat works with them a little bit time to time, dependingly, are Clan Giovanni, they are one of the youngest clans around, and they consider themselves to be a family rather than like a full clan, like an actual family. And they were originally merchants. In Venice is their home, and it's basically their place of power. And their big thing that they use is necromancy. They are master necromancers. They are very, very good at that, and extremely dangerous to the dead. For them, though, they have a very particular weakness of their bites are very dangerous, so it's very easy for them to kill people when they bite someone. For them, though, their abilities that they can do pretty easily is make zombies. They are very good at making zombies who can do basic tasks for them, and they can even remove souls from bodies and put souls into other bodies. They are also the vampires who are most often to do with wraiths, because they spend a lot of time working with wraiths, who are ghosts and spirits of the dead.
We do have a question from Sirio. I do know that you mentioned ghouls earlier, but he's asking, did you talk about ghouls? He says he had a Gangrel character with a dog ghoul as a partner.
So what a ghoul is, going more into depth with them, is a ghoul is someone that a vampire has fed their blood to, a human or an animal. It can be either or. And when they do that, the ghoul gets some of the abilities of the vampire. They get strength, they can get speed. They can also, in some cases, learn some vampire abilities. But they have to keep feeding, though. They have to keep eating. And when you feed on a vampire's blood, it creates what's called a blood bond. There are 3 levels of a blood bond, and every time you feed and drink a vampire's blood, it moves up 1 level. At level 3, which is where most ghouls are going to be at, a person is going to be so obsessed and so basically addicted to that person, they will be absolutely loyal and adoring and loving, to the point where they will even kill themselves for the person if that's what's asked for them. They still have free will, but they get obsessive over drinking their blood and to basically obeying and doing whatever the person wants. They love them as much as they are capable of loving anyone. And the person who gave them the blood is the most important person in their life and takes priority over everything else. and most ghouls will become that. A ghoul's emotions basically always running on extreme. It's always basically at the top, and they are very prone to great rages and very disturbing cravings at times. The aging of a person who feeds on their vitae stops, and sometimes even reverses a little bit. They get limited access to disciplines, and they will heal much faster than a normal person will. They are also dependent on that vampire's blood, though, or they will revert to their true age. And this can kill you if you are over basically 100 years. That will probably kill you. You also have to worry about the blood bond and be careful about that. And you're basically a slave to an inhuman monster who basically sees you as a light snack or a chess piece to be used and thrown away.
We do have Toshme here says there was a story of a vampire who had a favor over a Nos to have them sire the lover of the Lasombra.
I'm looking forward to...
It was a little while ago.
Yep. Yeah, that's the type of politics you can get into.
And apparently the blood bond also works with other vampires?
Yes, it does. A vampire who is sired has a 1-point blood bond with whoever sires them. That's why they're usually loyal to them and will listen to them and such. Ghouls are strong, ghouls are tough, and ghouls can be very, very scary. Most vampires will have ghouls basically being their muscle, or to do things during the day for them. Because, hey, they might be limited during the day, but their ghouls aren't, so their ghouls can keep doing things. Ghouls are also immune to the delirium of werewolves. So a ghoul will not freak out when they see a werewolf. Let's see, what else?
Ghouls are human plus. They are not as strong as most other supernaturals.
Nope, they aren't. But keep in mind, though, ghouls can be scary. I mean, I'm also running from the perspective of a normal person as well. A ghoul versus a normal human, the ghoul's 99% of the time going to win. Especially if the ghoul can get in close. They're usually going to be much stronger than a normal human will be. But also, most people don't know about them.
Sirio says, werewolves and vampires are mortal enemies, right? Cannot even the Gangrel see eye to eye with them?
So, it's a little complicated here. Vampires do not like werewolves because werewolves tend to try to rip their fucking faces off. So
To be
that's one of the
fair,
reasons.
werewolves try to rip everybody's faces off.
This is true. Um, so vampires tend to stay to cities because they believe that werewolves don't usually go to the cities that much. They are wrong about this, but they don't necessarily always realize it. For the werewolf, though, the werewolves see vampires as minions of the worm. They see them as beings basically who have been corrupted and who are an affront to Gaia and who are dangerous. To them, vampires are an abomination that should be purged with fire and claw. Not always. Theoretically, it is possible, like in my world that I run, Empty Springs, Colorado, there is basically a ceasefire between the vampire clans and the werewolf tribes. They've kind of worked together enough that they don't go around cavorting with each other, but they're willing to live and let live so long as no one fucks with each other. For the most part. So, but normally it's going to take a lot for a werewolf to not kill a vampire on sight. Like, being in public would be enough to do it. Like, they wouldn't kill them in public, but if they had a chance, they would probably try to jump the vampire and kill them. Unless, like, say it's a vampire that the person knew when they were young, like they were childhood friends. Then the werewolf might hesitate because this is like one of their best friends who they lost contact with for a little bit, but hey, they're here. It's like, oh god, they're a vampire. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here because I know I'm technically supposed to probably kill them, but they're my friend. So that can lead to really interested, complicated situations. On the whole, though, pretty much outside of Empty Springs, vampires do not like werewolves. Werewolves do not like vampires. Um, they sort of just try to avoid each other for the most part as much as they can. Especially since a lot of vampires actually work for Pentex, knowingly. A lot of the older vampires, a few of them can be found working for Pentex, and there's like 3 different vampires who are on the board of directors for Pentex. The most famous being a Malkavian. Otherwise, they don't really deal with each other too much, unless like a vampire actively gets in their way. Then they will kill them. Any other questions from anyone? Question time is fun. I like question time.
Toshime does say, and if the ghouls break the masquerade, the vampire who made them is in trouble.
Yes. Ghouls are basically considered property. They are considered to be objects and items of whoever made them. So anything that they do falls on the vampire, not the actual person.
So I suppose that vampires might be a little encouraged to treat their ghouls well.
Well, keep in mind, they're blood bonded. Most ghouls are going to be obsessively in love with them and will do
Okay.
whatever they say.
That's fair. That is fair.
Even if you abuse them horribly and did horrible things, they will still love you. And that can basically cause them to self-destruct, though, too. But they will be fanatically devoted to you. So it's not usually a big deal for them in that way. What's up?
I was just saying that ghouls are fanatically devoted to their vampires, just like Zim is fanatically devoted to you.
Yes, exactly. Don't question it.
I'm pretty sure it's the other way around.
Um,
Or perhaps mutual. We can go with mutual.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's actually a term for a independent ghoul. There are independent ghouls. They exist. One of the most famous of them is Caiaphas Kane, or Caiaphas Smith, sorry. He is probably considered to be the most powerful human character in World of Darkness. And this guy is a vanilla mortal. This guy is not supernatural in the slightest, really. Okay, take that back. He is a technically a ghoul, but that's because he feeds on vampire blood in order to make sure that he doesn't die from old age. He was born in 1815, and he's still alive today. The Camarilla, the main group of vampires, that's what they're called, the Camarilla. They know of Caiaphas. He is considered to be basically the most dangerous hunter they have ever met. And the group of vampires who are in charge of justice, known as the Justicars, basically have decreed that all kindred are to avoid him at all costs. He usually sticks around. New England is pretty much his hunting ground, his main hunting ground. He doesn't usually travel too much. So pretty much all of the Camarilla in New England have basically said, avoid this man on sight. Do not engage with him. Do not be seen by him. Do not do anything around him that will make him basically believe you are a vampire. Anyone who breaks this law is put to death. Any prince who does not carry out this law will be put to death. That's how big of a deal it is. They are basically hoping that if they can keep him away from vampire blood for about 20 years, he'll die of natural old age, which is what they're desperately hoping for. This guy has a true faith level of 8. To put that in perspective of what that can do for someone with that level of true faith, you are getting into the point of miracles, and they can negate vampire disciplines. They can force a wraith out of a person. They can bless a religious icon to the point where anyone who has it can do damage to people. They can counter magic from mages. They can stop a creature that's trying to kill them from actually doing anything and be overcome by guilt. They can banish demons and spirits. They can cure any disease. They can sanctify an area to protect it. They can get visions and prophecy. They are protected by their faith. So he can get 8 points of faith as a soak bonus to resisting being hurt. He can heal people. He can bring back the dead. He can lift a curse or stop someone from dying.
For those that may have missed it earlier, true faith does not necessarily mean, the Christian God. It's any higher power. As long as you've got a strong enough faith, then you get the true faith stuff.
And he is getting to the point where he is close to increasing his true faith again. And at that point, he can make wraiths transcend and basically send them to their final reward. He can make himself invulnerable to any action or power from supernatural evil, no matter what may cause it. and he can force evil creatures to realize they need to die and to submit to execution or to commit suicide. He is terrifyingly powerful. He knows a lot of special abilities. He is a master of weaponry. He is a master of hand-to-hand fighting. He is extremely strong due to being a ghoul still. He has low-level ghoul disciplines like potency. This man is a human. He is a normal human. But he is basically absolutely terrifying to vampires and even other supernatural creatures. He focuses on vampires, but he himself considers himself to be a protector of the innocent, basically. His main target are vampires, and that's what he focuses on, but if he sees someone being attacked by a supernatural creature, he will step in to stop them. He's sort of the boogeyman for vampires in some ways, but he's also technically a ghoul.
Well, all right then.
Also, it is 6 o'clock. I just realized that.
Yeah. It is time for us to get switched over. We are going to take a bit of an intermission before we get started with Demon Slaying Duo, but we will return soon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for Curtails. We'll be back next week with more of this. Check out our website, zgfgaming.com. We've got links for our Discord, Telegram, Twitter, Patreon, and more there on the website, as well as down in the description below, as well as through our link tree. Check out our Patreon over at patreon.com/zgfgaming. Consider becoming a patron over there and supporting the channel, making sure that these streams can keep on coming to you all. You can also support the channel by simply sharing the stream around, as well as grabbing merchandise from zgfgaming.store, or by using our Humble Bundle partner link, which you can find through the link tree or in the description below. Again, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you to my patrons, donators, and subscribers. It is because of your support that I'm able to continue bringing these streams to you all. I really cannot do this without your guys' help and support. And of course, all of you just for watching and hanging out with us. I appreciate you guys so much. But for now, I bid you all the most fondest adieu. And thank you, Kerr, for doing that for us.
No problem. Yeah, I realized afterwards that Caiaphas Cain is from Warhammer 40k.
Ah.